Silent Hollow. Nestled deep within a valley, it was perpetually shrouded in an eerie silence. The town was old, a relic of a bygone era. Towering trees, their branches heavy with age, stood guard around its perimeter. They seemed to press inwards, suffocating the town in their silent embrace. Above, the mountains loomed, their peaks perpetually shrouded in a swirling mist. The mist seemed to seep into the very soul of Silent Hollow, blanketing it in an ethereal, unsettling atmosphere. The townsfolk were a quiet, reserved bunch. They went about their daily lives with a somber air, their faces etched with a deep-seated weariness. The air itself felt heavy, laden with unspoken secrets and a palpable sense of foreboding. The buildings were mostly old, their brick facades weathered and worn. Many stood empty, their windows dark and lifeless eyes staring out at the world. The heart of Silent Hollow was a small, desolate square. In the center stood a weathered stone fountain, its once sparkling waters now reduced to a murky trickle. Elias's Oddities was more than just a bookstore. It was a repository of the strange, the unusual, the downright eerie. Its narrow doorway, framed by intricately carved wood, seemed to beckon those brave enough to enter. The air within was thick with the scent of aged paper, leather, and something vaguely unsettling. The shop was a labyrinth of towering bookshelves, their wooden frames groaning under the weight of countless volumes. The books themselves were a sight to behold, bound in leather, velvet, and even human skin. Their titles whispered of forbidden knowledge, of ancient curses, and of creatures that lurked in the shadows. Among the books, scattered throughout the shop, were other, even more peculiar items. A stuffed raven perched atop a human skull, its obsidian eyes glinting in the dim light. In the back of the shop, behind a counter piled high with ancient tomes, sat the proprietor himself. Elias was an enigma, an old man with piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through you. Emma had always been drawn to the unusual, the macabre, the things that sent shivers down most people's spines. She was a college student, her mind hungry for knowledge, but not the kind found within the pages of her textbooks. She craved stories of the supernatural, of ancient lore, of the things that lurked just beyond the veil of reality. One day, while exploring the nearby town of Silent Hollow, she stumbled upon Elias's Oddities. The moment she stepped inside, she knew she had found something special. She spent hours browsing the shelves, her fingers trailing over the spines of ancient books, her heart quickening with each eerie artifact she encountered. She was particularly drawn to the section on folklore and mythology. It was a small, leather-bound book, its cover devoid of any title or markings. The leather itself was old and cracked, the color of dried blood. Intricate, thorny vines were embossed on the cover, their tendrils seeming to writhe and twist as if alive. The book seemed to pulse with a strange energy, a dark aura that both terrified and fascinated Emma. Carefully she picked it up, her fingers trembling slightly as they brushed against its cold, almost clammy surface. The moment her skin made contact with the book, a wave of icy cold shot up her arm. She gasped, instinctively pulling her hand away as if she had been burned.
What? What is this? Why do I feel so drawn to it? Despite her apprehension, she found herself drawn back to the book. It was as if it held some strange power over her, compelling her to uncover its secrets. She knew she should put it back, forget she ever saw it. But the allure of the unknown, the promise of forbidden knowledge, proved too strong to resist. I have to know. I have to. With a deep breath, she picked it up again, this time holding it with a handkerchief.
Elias watched her approach from behind his mountain of books, his piercing blue eyes studying her intently. He seemed to know exactly which book she held, his gaze lingering on it for a moment. He remained silent as she placed the book on the counter, his gaze never leaving hers.
This one. How much is this one? Elias didn't answer right away. He reached out, his long bony fingers gently tracing the outline of the book. His touch seemed to make the book shudder, the thorny vines on its cover writhing as if in pain.
You are drawn to it.
It's different. What is it?
This book is not meant for the likes of you. It is a book of shadows, of secrets best left undisturbed. It is a book of power, yes, but power corrupts, and this power it consumes. Elias held up a warning finger, his expression serious. It is said that this book is cursed, that it feeds on the souls of those who dare to read its words. Many have possessed this book, but none have escaped its grasp.
Elias leaned closer to Emma, his voice a low whisper. Emma should have been scared. She should have heeded the old man's warnings, turned away from the book's allure. But fear was quickly replaced by an almost insatiable curiosity. That night, back in her dimly lit dorm room, Emma found herself inexplicably drawn to the book. The room was silent, her roommate out for the evening. The only light came from a flickering candle on her desk, casting long, dancing shadows across the walls. The air felt heavy, charged with a strange energy that seemed to emanate from the book itself. It lay open on her desk, its pages filled with an indecipherable script that seemed to writhe and shift before her eyes. As she leaned closer, her heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and dread, the candlelight flickered, casting grotesque shapes on the walls. The temperature in the room plummeted, a sudden chill that sent goosebumps erupting across her skin. She could have sworn she heard a whisper, a faint, raspy voice that seemed to emanate from the very pages of the book. Despite her growing unease, she couldn't tear her gaze away from the book. It was as if it held her captive, its power seeping into her like a drug. The strange symbols and diagrams began to make sense, their meaning slowly revealing itself to her. When the light returned, she saw it, a shadowy figure, tall and gaunt, standing in the corner of her room. The details were hazy in the dim light, but she could make out its long, sharp fingers and the malevolent gleam of its eyes. It didn't move, didn't speak, but its presence alone was enough to send a chill down her spine. Terror gripped her, icy and paralyzing. She tried to scream, but no sound escaped her lips. She tried to move, to run, but her body felt heavy, as if anchored to the spot. The figure took a step towards her, its movements fluid, almost serpentine. The room grew colder still, the air thick with the stench of decay and something else, something alien and utterly foul. Whispers slithered from the shadows, faint and indistinct. The darkness was all-encompassing, suffocating. Emma thrashed wildly, her screams swallowed by the oppressive blackness. She could feel the creature's cold, fetid breath on her face, its skeletal fingers digging into her arms. Then, as quickly as it had begun, the struggle ceased. The creature's grip loosened, its weight vanishing from atop her.
What? What just happened? Disoriented and terrified, Emma scrambled back until her back hit the wall. She gasped for breath, her lungs burning, her mind reeling. A faint, ethereal glow emanated from her desk, drawing her gaze. The book lay open, pulsating with an otherworldly light. Its pages seemed to churn and swirl, the strange symbols now glowing with an eerie luminescence. What is this? As she watched, mesmerized by the spectacle, an image began to form within the book's pages. It was a scene from a nightmare, a swirling vortex of darkness and despair.
The morning sun, filtering through the flimsy curtains, seemed to mock the horrors of the previous night. The dorm room was quiet, eerily still. The only evidence of the previous night's terror was the overturned chair and the lingering chill that clung to the air like a shroud.
Emma? Emma's roommate Sarah yawned as she stumbled into the room, her eyes still heavy with sleep. She glanced at Emma's empty bed, a flicker of annoyance crossing her features. Emma, you awake? Silence. Sarah frowned, tossing her backpack onto her bed.
There, on the once blank flyleaf, was a new illustration. It was a chillingly detailed portrait of Emma, her face contorted in an expression of pure terror, her eyes wide with unspeakable horror. She was trapped, imprisoned within the book's pages, her outstretched hand reaching towards the reader as if begging for release.
Oh my God, Emma! The image was so lifelike, so visceral, that Sarah recoiled from the book as if burned. The book slipped from her grasp, falling to the floor with a heavy thud. As it landed, a single feather drifted from its pages, a feather as black as night, as light as a whisper. Sarah stared at the feather, her mind struggling to grasp the impossible. Where did this book come from? And what happened to Emma?
The disappearance of Emma sent ripples of shock and fear through the quiet campus. The police were called, an investigation launched, but no trace of her was ever found. Some whispered of foul play, of a stranger with dark intentions. They spoke of cursed objects, of ancient evils, of souls devoured by forces beyond human comprehension. The book, now an object of fear and fascination, sat undisturbed in the evidence locker, a silent testament to the power of the unknown.